Alright, we got this one mistake changed the NBA forever.
Chances are you have no idea who this man is.
I have no idea who this man is.
Camille made a
You're right.
decision
How the
that
fuck
would
did you know
change
that?
the NBA as we know it. See, Camille was a professional soccer player in his home country of Cameroon in the late 60s. And he was good. For 2 years, Camille traveled the country playing the sport he loved at one of the highest levels. But his father wasn't a fan of sports and saw soccer as an activity for those who couldn't succeed in other areas of their life. So just as his soccer career was taking off, he had to retire to focus on a more respected career in politics and local government. Fast forward 2 decades, and Camille would go on to be the chief to a small town just outside of Yaoundé, Cameroon. And throughout his life, Camille grew quite the family, 10 children in total. One of them you might be familiar with, named Luc Mbamute. Luc, just like his father, loved soccer. His dream was to one day play professionally like his dad did. And growing up, Luc would focus on soccer and play the game almost exclusively until about the age of 13, where one day, while on his way to soccer practice, Luc noticed a basketball court that usually sat empty was being used by other local kids. For the next few days, every time he passed the court, these boys were shooting hoops. And slowly, Luc's curiosity got the best of him. So later that week, when no one was around, he grabbed his soccer ball, headed to practice, but this time, he stopped at the empty basketball court and took a shot. And that was it. He was hooked. For the next 10 years, Luc gave up soccer to focus on basketball. He quickly rose through the ranks in Cameroon's youth system and even gained the attention of college scouts in the United States after being selected to be a part of Cameroon's national youth basketball team, eventually earning a scholarship to play basketball at UCLA. His parents were reluctant to send their boy to the US, but remembering the difficult decision he had to make because of his father, Camille didn't want to stop his son from pursuing his dreams in sports. And so in 2004, Luc moved to the US and soon after enrolled at UCLA on a basketball scholarship. And 4 years later, after a decorated college career, Luc would become just the 3rd player in his country's history to be selected in the NBA draft.
He was playing with Westbrook?
Because throughout his NBA career, Luc would frequently travel back to Cameroon to visit family and host his own basketball camp. And it was at his camp in 2011 where he discovered possibly the next great Cameroonian basketball player. A tall, lanky kid who just picked up.
You're not gonna tell me that's Embiid, right? That's Embiid. I'm pretty that you gotta be Embiid.
If you want to go to Guyana.
Sport a few months prior, had no real skill or finesse, but had all the potential in the world. His real passion was volleyball, and he was supposed to move to France later that year to play professionally. But Luc knew this kid was special, so under Luc's mentorship, the teenage prospect continued to develop his skills and moved to the US just 1 year later in pursuit of his basketball dreams. In the US, he enrolled at one of the best prep basketball programs in the country and quickly became one of the most sought-after recruits, growing to 7 feet tall, watching tapes of Akeem Olajuwon to improve his game, and even earning himself a full ride to play at the University of Kansas. But not even Luc could have predicted just how fast he would excel. His game was getting better almost by the day. His potential was seemingly unlimited. And after just 1 season in college, the 20-year-old Cameroonian recruit would enter the 2014 NBA draft, where he was selected with the 3rd overall pick. His name? Joel Embiid, the greatest Cameroonian player in NBA history. One man giving up his sports dreams over 50 years ago triggered a series of events that would eventually lead to 2 others having the opportunity to live out theirs. If Luc Mbamute never stopped at that court to take a shot on his way to practice, he might have never fell in love with the game. His journey to the NBA would have never happened. Maybe he focuses on soccer instead. He would have never hosted his basketball camps, and we would have never discovered one of the greatest players the world has ever seen. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the butterfly effect. When a small and seemingly insignificant occurrence has rippling effects through time, leading to some consequential event, sometimes long after the initial event. And this is just one of many butterfly effects that would change the course of NBA history forever. Today's video is brought to you by Liquid IV. Stay hydrated and fueled with Liquid IV. During the 2010s, Golden State began to put together a team that could actually compete. An electric, high-scoring guard in Monte Ellis, a star and a real inside presence with David Lee, and a baby-faced assassin by the name of Stephen Curry. This core group was fun. Fans were re-engaged, but most importantly, they were good. The only thing standing in the way of them in a playoff spot was Steph Curry's ankles. Every time
yeah,
the
he was
Warriors
always
picked up
getting
steam and
injured.
got on a
Damn.
rhythm, Steph would go down
True.
with another ankle injury. But in 2012, there was a specific injury that would alter the timeline of Steph's career and the timeline of the entire NBA.
Harry Neal dribbled it off his leg.
Oh my goodness.
Steph Curry hurt himself
his
again.
ankle. Oh, this is just heartbreaking is all I can say. I hurt for him personally and certainly hurt for the team and the organization.
After getting his ankle troubles under control in his first 2 seasons in the league, Steph, seemingly out of nowhere, sprains his ankle against the Spurs just 6 games into his 3rd year in the league. An injury that would snowball out of control and re-aggravate again and again. Unlike his sprains in the past, this one lingered, causing him to miss entire chunks of the season. Even
Damn,
with his
I didn't know it was like
military-grade
that.
ankle braces, the sprain kept
that's
creeping
why
back
they
up,
wanted to
eventually
trade him at
leading to a
120.
season-ending surgery just 2 months after his initial injury. Meanwhile, the Warriors' season was in a tailspin, and a change was desperately in need before their window on what looked like a promising group closed. A trade was in need, and it would be a move that would make or break the next decade of basketball in Golden State. Their trade target? Milwaukee Bucks center Andrew Bogut. The only way to get him, package one of their starting guards in the deal. The choice seemed pretty obvious at the time. Get rid of the guy with debilitating ankle issues and keep the borderline all-star scoring machine. And so on March 13th, 2012, just 2 days after Steph played his last game of the season before undergoing surgery on his right ankle, the Warriors and the Bucks agreed to a 5-player trade involving Andrew Bogut and Steven Jackson for Ekpe Udoh, Kwame Brown, and Monte Ellis. This came as a massive shock to the NBA world, as the Warriors just gave up arguably their best player and kept an unproven talent that couldn't even stay healthy. With every piece of evidence
The best
suggesting
trade they
otherwise,
ever made.
the Warriors
Holy
rolled the
fuck.
dice and chose to keep Stephen
Damn,
Curry
they really believe
instead
in
of
him.
Monte Ellis, leading to a series of events that would completely alter the landscape of the NBA for the next decade and creating one of the greatest dynasties in the history of basketball. The choice was theirs, and they made the right one. Except, not really. Years after this trade broke news around the league, it was discovered that the original deal wasn't Monte Ellis for Andrew Bogut, it was Stephen Curry for Andrew Bogut. The Warriors were ready to build around the trio of Ellis, Lee, and Bogut. But after completing a physical with team doctors within the Milwaukee Bucks organization, the status of Curry's ankle injuries was unclear at best. So the Bucks denied the trade and proposed a new one with Monte instead. And inexplicably, the Warriors accepted it. The same ankle injuries that gave Curry and the organization doubts about his future with the team, and even his future in the league, became the catalyst for one of the most pivotal trade decisions in the league's history. If Steph avoided those ankle injuries leading up to the trade, the Bucks would have accepted him in a package for Bogut. He would have ended up in Milwaukee, and the last 12 years of Warriors basketball that has redefined the league would have never happened. Instead, Steph would have joined the Bucks, where just 15 months after his arrival, he would have been paired with another player that might have sparked an entirely new dynasty.
Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's crazy, bro. Those different timelines and shit.
With the Daily Wire. With the 15th pick in the 2013 NBA
And Giannis did take like a couple years to get better, bro. Like your Joel Embiid.
Giannis Antetokounmpo from Athens, Greece.
Just one
Boy, he's
season
tall as
after their
fuck.
blockbuster trade, the Bucks drafted an 18-year-old Giannis Antetokounmpo, which would have paired their new dynamic point guard with a
Damn.
young international talent they call the Greek Freak. If Steph avoided those ankle injuries, particularly this one against the Spurs that would linger and inevitably blow up his season in 2012, the Bucks would have accepted the trade offer that included him, and we may have seen an NBA featuring a Bucks team with two of the greatest
Oh, that
players
team
of
would have
all
been
time.
insane.
The
Holy
Warriors
shit.
dynasty potentially replaced with a Bucks dynasty, and an entire decade of era-defining basketball erased and replaced with an unstoppable team in Milwaukee.
Oh my god, that shit looks so crazy to watch, bro. Curry and Giannis in the same team. Holy shit. Greatest team that never
Back in
happened.
1998, after having the NBA in a chokehold for the majority of a decade, the Bulls finished their last season together on top. But with their 6th championship ring came the demise of the best team in basketball. By the start of the lockout season of '99, the Bulls championship roster had been completely dismantled. Rodman was released, Pippen was traded to Houston, Phil Jackson retired. The team was a shell of itself, so Michael felt like his time in the league had come to an end, and so he retired as well. Except he wasn't ready to leave the game. Over the years, Michael has been adamant about the fact that if the Bulls franchise brought back this team for another shot at a title, he would not have retired before the 1999 season. The one non-negotiable for Mike was that he refused to play for anyone other than Phil Jackson. But in the words of Jerry Krause, former Bulls GM, Phil Jackson could have gone 82-0 with this team, and he was still going to be let go at the end of the '98 season.
Damn.
This decision essentially forced Michael into retirement. But just 5 months after Jordan announced his second retirement, Phil Jackson was hired as the head coach of a Lakers team on the verge of becoming the next great NBA behemoth. Meanwhile, Michael, who says he was absolutely sure about his decision to retire, was not quite ready to leave the game behind. Over the next couple years, videos surfaced of Mike visiting Bulls practices, terrorizing players in one-on-ones, clearly better than anyone in the gym. Reports at the time even detailed Michael seriously considering suiting up and playing in Spain for half a season. But before Michael made his return in Washington, he would often visit the Lakers. During practice, before games, he would go to their games and sit courtside, something he virtually never did with other teams. He would spend time with players, talking to Phil, even mentoring Kobe Bryant as he grew into a superstar. His involvement with the Lakers in the 1999 season was subtle, but had a massive effect on the team. Despite what he told us, Mike was not ready to retire in
rest in peace,
1999,
Kobe, man.
and with Phil Jackson coaching in LA, the obvious destination for the former Bulls great was to join the Lakers. But you see, the only problem was that by the time Jackson was hired to coach the team, Michael couldn't play basketball. It's been well documented that in the summer of 1998, Michael Jordan had caused severe damage to his right index finger while attempting to cut a cigar. In fact, in Jordan's retirement announcement, he mentions that the accident had severed a tendon in his finger and that the injury would require surgery. This injury, even if Michael never retired, would have sidelined him for the entire 1999 NBA season. And by the time he was physically able to return, the team that he had spent time around, developed relationships with, and was home to the only coach that he would play for, were already champions, completely removing any possibility of Mike signing with the franchise since Michael refused to join a team that were already established champions. It goes against everything the man believes. If Michael Jordan never severed his finger in a freak cigar cutting accident in 1998, the nagging itch he had to return to the game might have taken place 3 seasons sooner, with the only team that even had a chance at signing him, the Los Angeles Lakers. Instead, his injury delayed his return to the game and axed his chances of playing for Phil Jackson again and playing with Kobe and Shaq and a championship
There's no way Michael
roster.
Jordan will have been able
This
to
team
play
could have
with Kobe and
happened
Shaq,
in a
bro.
world where
I just
Michael
don't see
Jordan
it,
doesn't
man.
get into a
Maybe
freak
possible,
accident
but
in
I
the
just do not
1998
see it.
offseason. We may
Two
have seen a
fucking
Lakers
players that
team
need the ball
featuring
in their
Shaq,
hand.
Kobe,
I don't know,
and
man.
Jordan entering the 1999 NBA season. Maybe instead of imploding a few years later, this team continues to win and stays together. Maybe Michael retires for the final time, not as a washed-up Washington Wizard, but instead a Bulls and Lakers legend with 3 or 4 more rings. Or maybe Michael's tyrant leadership drives Shaquille O'Neal out of LA, and we never get that 2000s Lakers dynasty at all.
Yeah, that's what
Maybe
I'm saying.
Michael's role on the team greatly reduces Kobe's, and we never see the true potential of the Black Mamba. And maybe everything went exactly the way it was supposed to, because that's the butterfly effect. When something almost insignificant spurs a series of events that leads to something much, much bigger.
Look at Jimmy, man, being inspirational. Come on, bro. Shout out to Jimmy. Great video.